All right, welcome to week 2 of our Institute. We're going to kind of pick up where we left off last week and a little bit of a different subject matter. It's still a cult by every stretch of the imagination because there is a group of people, they don't go by this name any longer, but if you remember a few semesters back, we talked about there are globalist forces that are on the scene right now, and they go by various different names, different group names, but I want to sort of tie in how the group that was formerly known as the Learned Elders of Zion, and there's a group, and they have what is known as the Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion. They didn't exist in that name up until the late 1800s, but it will help make some sense and connect some dots as to what you see going on right now. There was a publication that was leaked, if you will. In Russian, it's Z-N-A-M-Y-A, Znamya, I guess is how you pronounce it, Znamya, and it means banner. It was their banner, their battle cry for war. It was a Russian publication launched by an individual named Pavel Khrushchevin, and it was a series of publications in pre-Bolshevik Russia. It outlined the plans to use such groups for the purpose of accomplishing class warfare, racial warfare, Jewish-Muslim tension, to weaken the wills of Gentiles in order to use cultural influence while taking over the world through financial conspiracies. These protocols, in my opinion, are still very much alive and well. It is a global cult. It is not a religious cult, but a cult nonetheless. Next week, we'll learn a little bit more about the books that they use when we look at the Theosophical Society. I know these are not the regular run-of-the-mill cults that you would expect. Say, Pastor, I want to learn about the Mormons. We're going to learn. We got 12 weeks of this. This is only week 2. We got plenty of time to cover that, and I will cover that. But these elders, they were spearheaded, and you'll know this name. Jacob Schiff was one of the elders, as well as some of the more dominant European Jewish men that were here in the turn of the 19th into the 20th century with tremendous money, European backing, global backing. And they formulated and followed, and I think following is more important than the actual formulation. They followed, and still to this day follow, these protocols like we as Bible-believing Christians should follow the Bible. These protocols were not new. They were simply derived by the writings of such men as Machiavelli, Adam Weishaupt, and a Confederate general by the name of Albert Pike. Although these protocols are viewed internationally as myths, just so you know, I'm very, very, very well aware that there are groups all over the country as well as all over the world that say, oh, this is just a conspiracy, this is not true, there's no relevancy to it. But you, again, I'm not here to tell you what you should believe. You draw your own conclusions. I'm here to just present the information. Although they are viewed globally as myths, wicked, foolish fabrications, there does, in my mind and in my opinion, without question, exist a group today. They may not be called the elders. I would actually go on record as the saying, they're today known as the Good Boy Club. It is a group of billionaires whose names I will not mention. Not that I'm afraid, I just don't want to mention a name unless I'm sure that they are part of it. But the protocols are the official minutes of meetings and proceedings. That's what a protocol is by definition. Official minutes of a meeting and its proceedings. In 1865, a Jewish rabbi named Reichhorn delivered them at a speech in Prague. So we now know a place, a date, and a person. The location was Prague, the date was 1865, and the person was a Jewish rabbi named Reichhorn. In 1897, 32 years later, the protocols were reissued at the first Zionist Congress held at Basel under the presidency of the father of modern Zionism, Theodor Herzl. You're welcome to look up those names. The men behind the protocols on the eve of the Jewish Revolution, Benjamin Disraeli published a novel called Coningsby. Part of that novel gave hints, outlines of the so-called fictitious fabled protocols. And in that book he said this, and I quote, "The world is governed by very different personages from what is imagined by those who are not behind the scenes." In other words, if you're not behind the scenes, you have no idea who's really running the show. That's a direct quote from his book. He went on to show that these personages were all very, very wealthy Jewish industrialists, bankers, and such. And so people can say that this isn't real. And again, you draw the conclusion. But I'm going to spend the next few moments mentioning these protocols, and then you tell me if they sound familiar. You tell me if they make sense. You tell me if you don't see these things happening in real time in our lives. All the protocols, the learned protocols, are predicated on number one. All men are inclined to evil rather than good. Regardless of what religionists will tell you, man is slanted toward evil, not toward good. Man is depraved. And these protocols play on that depravity. Protocol 2, preach liberalism, which is nothing more than a disguised progressivism. Today we see that liberalism that existed in the Democratic Party back in the 60s essentially no longer exists. Today it's just called progressivism. These are progressive. These are extreme left-wing progressives. They now have the freedom in our country to embrace that title, progressive. Protocol number 3, use freedom as civil rights and keep a constant class warfare going on. That's where this is all founded. Having class, war against class. Having race, war against race. Point number 4, protocol number 4. Any and all means are justified in achieving the illumination of any society. That means whatever works, do it. The ends justify the means. That is not biblical. That's a protocol. Number 5, an absolute right to lie exists. Now, didn't we just last week read that in the Sharia law of the Muslim community, there is an absolute right to lie in order to achieve the furtherance of Islam? Many of the elders, I'm safe. I don't know that I'm safe, but I feel it's safe to say. And again, I don't know if I'm safe, but when you reach the 32nd degree of Freemasonry and you are invited to join the other group of the Muslims, which is the Shriners, in order to become a Shriner, you must reject placing your hand on a Bible and place your hand on the Quran and swear allegiance to Allah and the teachings of the Quran, which is furthering the global government of Islam. And so I know that these Shriners hospitals do a great deal of wonderful things for kids, but don't be fooled by their good works. There's nothing good about them. Number 6, the elders' powers must remain invisible. That's why these are all just played off as fables. These are played off as just conspiracy theories. You'll hear people say George Soros and then say, oh, come on, George Soros. Well, you make the decision on your own. Use multiple minor occurrences, just a bunch of little occurrences, to keep a constant mob madness philosophy. Did we not see this stuff play out pretty much 24/7 on television when everybody was confined to their homes under a government-mandated stay-at-home order during the so-called pandemic? Number 8, at all cost, corrupt youth. At all cost, corrupt youth. Drugs, alcohol, social media, pornography. I made this statement. Right now, globally, around the world, 40 to 45% of all of the money made in the pornographic industry is coming from the age group of males 12 to 17 years old. Seizure of property by any means, eminent domain. Number 10, use slogans and psychological warfare to control masses. The fraternity of such and such. The liberation, the Palestinian Liberation Organization. Whenever you hear any group embrace the name liberator or liberation, there's one thing you could absolutely bet your life on, and that is people are going to end up in slavery. Anytime they tell you they're giving you something free, they're taking control. When they tell you they're bringing peace, they're going to bring war. When they tell you they're going to bring health and cure, they're going to bring sickness and death. Use war to place nations in debt. Make all nations debtor nations, and then you solve the problems with the protocols. In other words, you get people vulnerable, get them in debt. That's why you get letters every week trying to get you to live your life on credit cards that you really can't afford to pay, buy things that you don't need. Debt is a huge tool of the elders, and you're then again making the bankers richer. The members use private wealth to place officials, so-called elected officials, and if they can't elect them legally, they'll elect them illegally. If they can't elect them by a vote, they'll elect them by fraudulent vote. But this private funding of wealth is used to place officials in official places. And then those officials that are placed bring into their administration, no matter whether it's a local community, a county, a state, or a federal position, You then place advisors in close proximity to you and your office so that the protocols can be placed into action on more of a micro level to support the macro level. Number 13, and this is a big one, you must maintain absolute control of the press. That's why every morning the Central Intelligence Agency puts out press releases. The government, the CIA, actually produces your press. That's a pretty scary thought. After causing and fermenting trauma, the agents that are in these placed positions that are sympathetic to the protocols of the elders, they will surface as saviors to the problem. Now, just so you know, I didn't make these up. This is how they appear. And so, you have somebody, Fauci, who causes a traumatic pandemic and now has the solution to the problem. Number 15, create industrial depression, financial panic, unemployment, hunger, shortages, etc., and then use force to wipe out the dissenters. There's going to be, excuse the metaphor, but there's going to be an earthly hell to pay for those that don't take the vaccination. At least they're going to try. Number 16, infiltrate all fraternities and secret societies for the purpose of the elders. You know what that means? That they have actual people that are involved in every area of business and government. That means you have people that are sympathetic to this in all the fraternities. I'm talking about all the fraternal orders. The Fraternal Order of Police, the Fraternal Order of Firemen. Every fraternal order, every secret society has been infiltrated by those that are sympathetic to these protocols. Number 17, expound systematic deception by employing slogans like, we're going to cure this. We're going to cure that. It was actually used many, many years ago to get a president in office when he said, I'll put a chicken in every pot. That's psychological warfare. You tell these people this stuff. You tell people this, they begin to believe it. They look at personal gain. Oh, you're going to cure me? Oh, you're going to feed me? That's employing slogans for psychological warfare of the masses. Number 18, detailed plans. You have resolutions, revolutions, and then you use street fights. You bring the fight to the streets. This is not something that you can do simply by legislation. You must make it visible to the people. Once again, I refer back to the Black Lives Matter protests back during the shutdown of COVID when everybody was home watching it on television. You bring the fight to the streets to make it up close and personal to the masses so that they see it and feel it, and now they live in fear. Number 19, agents of the protocols are then used as advisors, special counsels. And I remember when Obama got elected. Obama, I clearly remember, handpicked something like 30 or so czars to oversee all of the different parts of government, the different agencies, the FDA, the EPA, and so forth. Use global monopolies to slant all things in a direction you want them to go in. Use high taxes, unfair trade, contracts to bring economic ruin. Phil Murphy is quoted, at least I see it advertised. I wasn't there when he said it, but I saw the video, if it's accurate, and not plagiarized in any way. Said if you're a single voter issue and that issue is taxation, high taxes, then New Jersey's not your state. They're telling you, Joe Biden said, you elect me, I'm going to raise your taxes. See, this sounds more like a political thing than a cult. What I'm trying to say is you can't separate the two. And then you use labor unions to subsidize the competition. Number 22, you build up armaments of government forces. Number 23, you appoint globalists as CEOs, presidents, and directors. You look at all the major companies in the world. They are all under, I believe it's 5 or 6 different companies. Corporations own everything else engulfed. And so you take globalists and you place them into positions of chief executive officer, presidents of universities and colleges, directors of this, directors of that. And this way they will in no way impede the protocols to be furthered. Number 24, infiltrate all classes of society and government for purpose of deception of all lower levels. You have people that are stopgaps so that when the peons in the lower level grunts start to get the bigger picture of what's happening, you have people that are in place to answer their questions and to keep them deceived and in the dark, to deny that what they see happening is really happening. And then use national and international laws to limit, control, and enslave masses. That's what cults do. They enslave people. Say, brother, why did you talk about that? Because it's real. And I can tell you that the learned protocols of the elders, they got Israel a name. What do you mean? You've not seen the end of this. The Bible says nations will rise against nations. They use Israel as a tool. They use God's people and God's land to continuously promote wars. And they use the nation of Israel and the Zionists. Do you know that Zionists have no desire to see Jesus Christ come back? They are a political movement only. And so the Zionists are there to simply play the part of a constant, ever-present global warfare. That doesn't mean I'm anti-Jew, I'm pro-Jew. It doesn't mean I'm anti-Israel, I'm pro-Israel. I'm just man enough to tell you I know what I see going on there. And so, right now, the sights of everybody are back in Afghanistan. That is going to be a constant source of interference. And every time, listen, every gallon of gas that is spent there, who pays for it? The United States taxpayer pays for it. Every hospital they build, every internment camp they build, that is all coming out of our pockets. It is taxpayer dollars. And if you take a minute to go back over those protocols, you will perhaps have a better understanding of what's going on and why it's that much more important to get into your Bible and believe your Bible and to be ready for when the trumpet sounds and we're called out. Say, are you date setting? I never date set. But I do know this. I do know that I see things setting up that make it very, very evident and crystal clear to me that the Bible is exact and perfect. And when you get to Revelation 18, Revelation 17 is a global religious system that falls. When you get to Revelation 18, it's a global city that falls. Well, where is that city? Well, the Bible calls her Babylon. Why is there no global city like that? Oh, there will be. And I cringe to say that it's going to be paid for by further United States taxpayers. And I wouldn't be surprised if the United States annexes a constant United States presence by a state in the Middle East. I'm not telling you for sure that's going to happen. It's my opinion. That is how we, the United States, are going to solve the issue of having a constant presence in the Middle East. I really believe that's going to happen. Say, we're talking about cults. Yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about. These elders, these protocols have the express purpose of bringing a Western American presence in the Middle East. This isn't about Rome, this is about Babylon. Rome falls in 17 of Revelation. This is all setting up Revelation 18. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope it meant something to you. Thank you.